Hello and welcome to Sacred Mindshift Circle. I'm your host, Dahlia Deborah Donalds. Today our guest is Ruth Elisabeth Hancock, a woman whose journey underscores the power of transformation, deep healing, and multidimensional awareness. Elisabeth is someone who has walked through her own struggles and come out the other side with a profound understanding of how our minds and hearts and spirits connect to something much greater than ourselves. She is a spiritual coach, podcaster, and best-selling author. Her most famous titles are Work Your Energy, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Raising Your Vibration, Tapping into Higher Consciousness, and Achieving More Happiness, Wealth, and Success. And also Human Origins, The Multiverse, and Our Star Ancestry. Welcome, Elisabeth.
Hi, Dahlia. Thank you for inviting me on.
So, Elisabeth, I found your work very interesting. And I just wanted to first ask you, how did you begin to, involve yourself in this topic and about our multidimensional selves?
Okay, well, like most people, I've always been intuitive. I've always been spiritual, not religious. And I've always been, I just see the world differently. And but I think it all sort of kicked off when my mother died, and this was around 12 years ago. And I just sort of, for the next year afterwards, I just kept hearing her voice in my head, and I just used to chat to her. We were living overseas, living in a hot country. I was sort of trapped inside with the kids a lot of the time, and I just thought it was sort of part of the grieving process, But some other things happened at the same time. So one day my sister came to visit, and I asked my mom if she wanted to give her a message. And then I got this sort of message coming through, and I relayed it to my sister. And it was so profound for her that it really started to make me think, gosh, am I speaking to my mother, And then at the same time, my daughter, she was seeing things in our house. She was talking about her past life. This went on for 2 years. So it really just piqued my curiosity, and I just started to research it. The logical, rational mind wants to try and understand things. And what I've now understood is that the analytical mind, or the ego, that essentially is like an interface allowing us to perceive physical reality, because now I understand that nothing is physical, everything is energy, vibrational frequency. So what is this physical world that we're living in? And I understand that that's what the brain does, is just translate the frequencies that we're surrounded by into a physical world that we see around us. And thinking about it from that side, I then started to research like string theory and M theory, and just timeline theory and all these different theories, and also started to learn about quantum physics. And it's just been a gradual sort of process, really. That was 12 years ago, and since then I've written 2 books. I've done a lot of research for those books, and I think it's sort of a process, and we could call it like a spiritual awakening, or like the hero's journey. There's so many different terms for this, this path that we're all walking on, what we call life. And that's where I'm at now, really, is that I understand that not only is the world not physical, but we are obviously not physical, but we are multidimensional as well. And I suspect that everything in the multiverse is multidimensional. I don't see the world or reality or myself as a one-dimensional being anymore.
So basically what you are describing is you were basically channeling your mother. You were getting downloads from her to be able to relate to your sister.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that as channeling or downloading, to be honest. I would call that, we can connect to the consciousness of anyone. Doesn't matter whether they're alive or dead. When I was researching for my first book, I was trying to understand quantum physics. And when I was I found a quantum physicist. I read some of his work, but he had died. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll see if I can connect to him. So I connected to him, and you don't get absolute, word by word information coming through. You get a sort of more like sense and feeling coming through. And so I sort of felt like I was speaking with his consciousness, and I was downloading information to do with him. But with my mother, it felt different. It felt very much like she was in the room with me, that I was just talking to her, having a normal conversation. And that's why I found it so weird that when I asked, if she wanted to give a message to my sister, I found it so weird that it was so profound. I thought she was going to just laugh at me and say, whatever, so silly. But it was very, very profound. And, it just shifted my whole thinking. And now I understand that at certain times in one's life, when things are becoming very difficult, maybe that, maybe when someone's died, or we've had a near-death experience, something has jolted us. And it's massively shifted our consciousness to such a huge degree that it changes, it changes reality. We become a very, very different person overnight. And I understand now that losing a loved one is one of those things. Also, divorce is another one. Like having an accident, which these are things that just sort of jolt you and you become a different person. And I think these are the times often when people connect to that spiritual essence of ourselves, and we realize that this world is not real. There's a lot more to it.
When you describe multiverse and you say that this world is not real, what does quantum physics say about this, as far as how many different kinds of dimensions are there?
Well, it depends what you read. And the thing about quantum physics is it's all theory. So it's not even accepted by most mainstream, or it's not accepted by mainstream science. So it's something that you have to use a different part of your brain to understand this sort of information. You won't find proof or logic or rationale for it. So to a certain extent, the analytical mind, or the ego, it will never understand spirit, because it's not designed for that. It hasn't been programmed for that. So it will only ever understand physical. So the fact that we are so much in our analytical mind and our logic and our ego these days, it sort of means that spiritual stuff is laughed at and not believed, because the brain simply, it will never believe it, and that's what they call the death of the ego. That the dark night of the soul is the death of the ego, as we're walking through, when we're understanding that it's the ego that creates the physical, but there is no physical. So essentially what quantum physics has discovered, and this was first done in 1801, the double slits experiment, and it's been studied, for like 200 years, but they essentially discovered that observing energy collapses it into light, and the observer affects the outcome of the experiment. So from that, they've sort of deduced that when we observe physicality, we collapse it into what we see as physical. So everything is energy, but it's the observing of it that collapses it into a physical. And we can see with also Schrodinger's cat as well, that one of those theories which says, is the cat inside the box? So if we put the cat inside the box, but we can't see inside the box anymore, so is the cat actually there? Or is it when we open the box and look inside and we see the cat, is the cat only there then? So there's a lot of theories around this sort of thing now. And actually, I'm more moving into looking at it in terms of sound and holographic reality these days, which is sort of the same thing, but it's different theories. So we can see now that sound creates all physical reality, It essentially creates sacred geometry. So this is the field of cymatics. And so sound is creating everything, but sound is frequency. So everything is essentially frequency, but we can't hear all frequencies. And, you know, this seems to be sort of creating this physical world. And so when the frequencies in the music industry were changed from 432 hertz to 440 hertz, this massively altered our world. I don't think people realize how much it massively altered our world. It turned a beautiful harmony at 432 hertz, which is the same hertz as the earth, into essentially an ugly harmony. It's completely out of sync. It's out of balance. It's not harmonic. And so that, just doing that, changed our physical reality on such a huge level. And, you know, and I can't believe that people, you know, talk about this as being conspiracy. I think if people really understood this and researched all of this around sound, I think they would understand things a lot more. But, you know, most people are very, very busy, you know. Most people are just trying to get by in life. And that's the problem, you know. We're just not seeing. You have to go into your spiritual essence, into your heart, to find truth and inner wisdom. And most of us are not doing that. We're stuck in the mind, in the analytical, the ego. We're stuck there. And that will never, ever, ever be able to understand or accept spirit. It just won't. The mind, it cannot do it. It's not been programmed to do that. So it will never do it. So you have to drop into your heart to find your truth and inner wisdom. And once you do that, the world becomes multidimensional, because you start to feel the subtle energy around you. You start to connect to all these different types of energies. And you feel the truth of it. And then the mind can understand it. Once you can feel it, the mind can understand it. And that's the death of the ego, the process of the ego beginning to understand what spirit means. And it's a process, and it can take 6 or 7 years for the ego to properly readjust. And once it does, then you are a spiritual person, and nothing will take you back into that egoic place anymore, because you're not that person anymore.
Well, it's interesting what you said, that overall people are just trying to survive. So most of the time they don't have the ability to stop and just stop, you know, and think for a moment, you know, what are we doing? What's going on? And when you say, for example, you spoke about the music and how there's this agenda that is obviously being implemented so that they can make us focus more on the ego versus in the spirit. How does this affect now people's ability to manifest?
Well, we don't manifest from the mind. The mind directs energy. So absolutely, the mind is a part of that, but we actually manifest from our vibration, which could be seen as the heart. So, and I think that's probably the bit that we just need to, we need to get this mind-heart connection back, you know. And there are many meditations that you can do online. Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot. Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, they all talk about this. The Heart Math Institute, you can go onto their website and there are these meditations. And it's essentially strengthening the vagus nerve, which is the nerve that runs from the brain to every organ in your body, in fact, but it runs to the heart. And, you know, cementing that heart-mind, that will really help you to manifest a better reality. But when the mind manifests on its own, you're manifesting all the crap in there, you know? So, and the thing is that we don't really know what we've done before. And, I'm talking about past lives here. We don't really know what we've lived or what we've done or who we were or any of these sorts of things. And we also have a lot of wounds from our childhood, which, to be honest, I think was all done on purpose. And so we start to manifest the wounds and the pain and the suffering. And so, and then people think, well, manifesting doesn't work. I'm not going to do it. But it's actually, you're manifesting your heart. You need to bring your heart, your love, your compassion, your high vibrational emotions into it, and then you will manifest more love. So it's about a vibrational frequency. Essentially, you have to raise the internal frequency of your own body, which means heal the wounds, heal your childhood wounds. You have to look at the inner demons. You have to look at the dark. You have to deal with it all. And again, that process can take years and years. I think that's why it takes so long, 6-7 years for the death of the ego, because you're having to deal with all the healing at the same time. But once you've got to a point where you've come to a place of love and compassion and acceptance, then your mind is manifesting a beautiful reality. So we are all creators. We're co-creators with, what we call God, source, universal life force, whatever, we call this. And, we are already creating this reality. But I think what was happened is that human consciousness was hijacked at some point, either by humans or non-humans or whatever, whatever it is. It was our human consciousness is being used to create a not good reality. And the changing of the frequencies has been a huge part of that. So we're now having to claim back our own human consciousness, and we are the majority. We can collectively manifest a beautiful reality if we just understand that none of this is real. It's all created by our own minds and hearts, and start focusing on creating a beautiful heart-led reality, and then it will happen.
Especially now that a lot of people say we are moving into the 5D or the Christ consciousness. Do you see that it's going to be something that is going to be more visible for people, that they are actually, they can recognize that they are creating what's happening around them and that they have the ability to change it?
Yes, I think we have to go back to our own individual vibrational frequency to answer this question. Hang on a second. And we are individual. We have our own unique frequency. So we have our own current vibration. And the vibration, it can change depending on, sort of healing and things like this. But ultimately, I believe that we're already in 5D. But if someone can't see it, it's because they're not in 5D. Their unique energetic vibration is not at 5D. And for me, it means that they need to raise their vibration. They need to work on raising their vibration, which is to heal the wounds, face the demons, face your childhood. And I think probably the fastest thing that you can do to raise your vibration is to accept that you created this reality that's around you. Now, it's not a blame game by any stretch at all. We are all collectively creating it. Our human consciousness is observing literally plasma, the etheric field, into reality. And we're all a part of that. But getting to 5D isn't just something that will happen to us, because that's victim mindset. Nothing happens to us. We create it. And this is a fundamental thing that is going on in our world at the moment, because that's exactly how our human consciousness was hijacked. It's been hijacked because we've had the knowledge taken away that we are the creator. So we are God. We're creating everything. And because of that, we're giving our power away on a daily basis. And that is the problem. We're giving our human consciousness away to other things. And we sort of have to stop doing that, because that in itself, from an energetic point of view, is that we perceive that everything is outside of ourselves. So we perceive that governments can change this world. We perceive that the people around us can help us. The God entities can come here and sort it all out. The ETs can come here and sort everything out. Whatever it is, the celebrities can sort things out. The rich people can sort things out. We have to understand that it's not like that. It's us. We sort things out. And once we manifest a better reality, that will happen, because it comes from within. All of this comes from within. It comes from inside us. It doesn't come from outside. And that's how we've been hijacked. That's how our human consciousness has been hijacked, because we've been led to believe that it's all coming from the outside in. And it isn't. It's coming from the inside out. So literally, we can shift things like that. But we have to collectively get to that knowledge. And as more and more people, start talking about this stuff and watching podcasts like yours, we can get to this knowledge. But then, of course, for many people, there's years of healing to get through as well. And that can be uncomfortable, and it's difficult to do when you're working a 12-hour day.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty much designed like that. As far as what we observe around us, I think that a lot of times we're not even conscious of how much, I think, like you mentioned, the news and all of these things are there trying to constantly provoke fear. And I speak a lot about fear because I think that is the greatest emotion that can pull people back into all of the other negative vibrations. What is your perception of how we go through life and, like you explained, having to confront our own traumas, but centered around fear, how fear is projected onto, how we allow fear to be projected onto us?
Yeah, well, I mean, fear is a vibration, and it's one of the vibrations used to keep the vibration low on this planet. And when we're in low vibrations, we are creating a low vibrational world, because it is human consciousness creating this world. And that's why we're broadcast, that's why we have fear continuously, and the TV, the news, everything that we watch. There's this is why the orchestrated religion was created, and it essentially brought shame and guilt into the reality. And I see the old religion, which is spirituality, is absolutely a part of our world. But the religions that have come in the past 2,000 years, beginning with the Church of Rome, they've completely hijacked something that was beautiful, and they've turned it again into something horrible, just like they did with the vibrations of music. They've done the same with religion. They've done the same with everything. But again, it's not actually real, because nothing is real. Everything is energy. So it's an understanding that you don't even have to do anything to change the world. You just have to shift your vibration to a higher vibration, and then we will collectively manifest a better reality. Because the only reason that we're collectively manifesting a bad or pain and suffering reality is because we have been kept in low vibrations through fear, shame, guilt. Even pride is a low vibration, and you only have to look at the different political leaders in different countries. You know, they have so much pride, and because of that, they start wars, and they allow their people to be massacred because of pride, you know. And you know, these people are, you know, they just don't realize that they're being totally played and manipulated and used by this very small group of people who understand that human consciousness creates everything, and are, you know, they own the media companies, they own the banks, they own the, you know, the big corporations, and they've essentially been dominating human consciousness for at least 120 years, if not like 300 years. And that's where we are now. And I wish people would understand and just see that they've been absolutely manipulated, you know, and they think that they're the ones in charge of their country, but they don't understand that they're not the ones in charge of their country. They're being manipulated and hoodwinked by I think a very small group of people.
Yeah, usually they say it's a very small percentage of, I guess, I'd like to think that there's entities, because some of the things that they do, I don't come across as something that someone with a soul or a human being would do to their own people. You also go a little bit into soul ancestry and exploring soul ancestry. Can you tell me a little bit about what you've learned about this?
Well, I suppose when I was researching for human origins, because like most people, I never felt that we came from an ape, you know, and there's no evidence to show that we did. It's another theory, you know, which it was a theory that, you know, like the elites liked, so they ran with it. And, you know, there's even now a petition in the universities to take this theory out, because it's blocking every other theory from coming in, and they still won't take it out, you know. So any sensible person knows that we haven't evolved from an ape. Unfortunately, they're still teaching it to children in school, so children come out believing that, and then they have to go through the whole painful death of the ego as they also begin to understand that everything that they've been taught is a lie, just as we're all beginning to understand now. So, but in terms of soul ancestry and bloodlines, I think I look at it more as a physical point of, rather than soul. So I've been researching bloodlines on Earth, and from my research, I would say that there are many bloodlines. And you know, even like mermaids, you know, there's so much evidence to show that we actually, you know, that there are mermaids, and actually so are we. You know, we have this sort of genetic structure in us as well. You know, so much of our myth stories are actually true, and it's bizarre to understand it. So, you know, dogmen, there is so much information about a tribe of people who essentially had the face of a dog, you know. We look at this and we think, but how could this be true? How could it be true? Well, because our world has been massively hijacked and altered, you know. And I think when we understand that humans are creating reality, maybe we can perceive that we can create any reality we want. And, you know, I think we've been really trapped into limited thinking as to who we are and what we can do. And so I would say that there are many different bloodlines on Earth, and that then links to the soul and ancestry of that person. But because of wave genetics, it shows that our DNA can be altered by energy as well. And also our soul also interlinks, if you will, with consciousness and our DNA and these sorts of things. So I do think that there are what we call star seeds incarnating here who are helping to raise the vibration of the planet, because I think there's a lot of things going on to help raise the vibration, because that really is all we have to do. We have to get to a higher vibration ourselves, and then we will all be in 5D, because 5D is already there. 6D is there. 7D is there. It's all there. It's all a state of being. And we just have to get our collective self to 5D. And I think that there are many things doing this. There are many things helping with this. And one of those things is the incarnation of higher beings, higher vibrational souls. But this is, I like the way that the Indian Vedas talks about it, actually. It talks about 3 types of beings that live in the multiverse. And they say that there are lower beings who they call greys and reptilians. There are higher beings who they call the celestials. And then there are human beings. So when we're talking about higher beings incarnating into human beings, that's how they would come in and create a new bloodline. So we could see Jesus as a higher being, an incarnation of a higher being. You know, we could see Buddha or Dalai Lama or any of these sorts of things, yeah, the incarnation of a higher being into a human being, a physical world. And then because they're a higher being, they bring in that soul essence as well. That allows the vibration of that human body to be upgraded. You know, it's now connecting with consciousness in a different way. And that creates a new bloodline. And that bloodline becomes a higher vibrational bloodline. So I sort of see it like that, really. Does that make sense? I'm not too sure I've explained that very well.
Yes, it does make sense. And I was going to ask you, because also another theory that a lot of people say is that our DNA was manipulated or kept off so that we would be able to disconnect from that higher consciousness. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, our DNA has been altered many times. And although it is talked about that it's always been altered from a negative point of view, I haven't found that myself with my research. I think it actually depends how you look at it. You know, so around 200,000 years ago, the FOXTP2 gene switched on, which allowed us to speak. And we could say that this took us away from our spiritual self. We are the only ones that can speak out of Neanderthal, Denisovan, and even the Sasquatch as well, says that they're not able to speak, you know, and we were basically given that, you know, the power of speech. But it's the power of speech that creates sound. And you know, from the Bible, it says, you know, the word is the beginning. Yeah. So it's sound. And of course, sound is what creates everything. So in a sense, that doesn't have to have been a bad thing, but I think it has been hijacked at some point and manipulated and altered. So we can see English is actually translated to be the language of the angels. So it's Anglo-Saxon, Anglais. You know, it actually means the language of angels. So what does that mean then? It means that the English language it's a language that is connected to light beings, or what we call angels, and it's a language that has been created to perform a certain function. And we can see by looking at the dictionaries and looking at Old English that English has been massively altered and changed. And by changing that language, they're changing reality, because every time we speak, we're now creating a different reality to the one we were creating before. So all this slang words, you know, they've taken out many really important words from the English Bible, the English language, and that in itself has shifted our reality. You know, there's also looking at the growth of the neocortex. So our brain grew over 800,000 years. You know, it grew by 76%. And yes, it grew the analytical mind. So we use that to analyze data, information, which meant that we became more analytical. But it also grew and allowed us to use emotions. So it connected us to more emotions. So it actually created a more loving, compassionate species, but it also created a species that could be manipulated through fear, guilt, and shame, because emotions, they're higher and lower. They're the, you know, the full broad spectrum. So I don't think that all of these genetic changes have been done as a bad thing. I think that it's possibly because I think that the earth was the Garden of Eden, and that it was a beautiful place. And, you know, it has been created as a place for spirits, souls to incarnate into physical bodies, to experience a physical reality. And I think what the Bible is telling us is that the Garden of Eden was hijacked at some point, and you know, it was taken over by non-humans, by humans, you know, by psychopaths, because we know that the psychopathic gene has actually grown from 5% to 10% of the population. So, you know, this has now doubled. So, you know, why have we suddenly got so many more psychopaths? And psychopaths don't have empathy, don't feel empathy or compassion. So just them alone could create a world, you know, a horrible world. So, but I don't see this as something bad. I feel that our world, and when we look at the Tartarian architecture, which, you know, as you know, I spoke about on Saturday as in a conference, we can see this architecture. It was there 300 years ago. So what's that telling us? It was telling us that as little as 300 years ago, maybe 500 years ago, we were still living in what we call the Garden of Eden. We were still having beautiful physical experiences. You know, we were experiencing about life, about love, about touch and taste. And something just came in and altered it and changed it. And you can see that evidence everywhere. Like I said, they've changed the English language, the language of angels. So we were light beings. We can see we still are light beings. You can see in Tibet, the Amazon as well, that they still, when they die, they basically turn back to light. You don't have to die in a suffering and painful way like we all do in the Western world. You know, so I'm not too sure I've answered your question, but, you know, but that's the point I'm trying to get across, is that I don't think it's all bad. I think that something has come in like 300, 500 years ago and just shifted everything and made us see things in a bad way.
No, that's a very perfect explanation. And yeah, I know usually what people like to say is that the English language, as you said, it possibly was a light language or a language of angels. And what they've done is now manipulated it to the point where they use it as spelling to work it against us, right? To make us actually put ourselves in bondage, sometimes speaking things over ourselves that we're unaware what the original meaning means. Can you go a little bit over energy codes and light codes within us?
Yeah, so light codes. So in quantum physics, it's what they would call bundles of data. You know, but in more spiritual terms, we can call it light codes. So light codes are essentially streaming in from the cosmos. They're streaming in from planets. They're coming in from, you know, from the moon. They're coming in from the sun. And the sun has now been recognized to be a portal. And it's most likely made of plasma, as I think everything is, in fact. And the interesting thing about plasma is that it can be invisible, a mist, or solid, all at the same time. And of course, that's what we're thinking with quantum physics. Quantum physics shows that energy and light So something can be energy collapsed into light, and it's the light that creates the physical reality. But are we actually thinking, actually, this is possibly plasma? So thinking about that in terms of the sun. So if the sun is a portal, what is on the other side of the sun? And what the Indian Vedas say is that essentially that is the celestials. That is the higher dimensions, the higher beings, the celestials. So this is higher frequencies that are coming in through the sun and the cosmos. And that is what light codes are. So light is everything. So everything is a light code, really. But in terms of what we're feeling now with the vibration of the planet and the raising of the vibration, we can all feel something shifting, something is getting more positive, something is, is helping the world shift. And I feel that it's light codes doing this. And it's telepathic waves as well, wave genetics. So everything in the universe is telepathic, including us. We were telepathic before we were altered to be able to speak. We still are telepathic, as many scientific things have proven. So we're being streamed with light codes all the time. And I think that this is done on purpose to raise the collective vibration, because something invaded our planet and brought us all down to very low vibrations. But this is creating an imbalance in the entire universe. And so it's the universe is rebalancing again through energies and lights, which is the same thing. Essentially, everything is frequency, everything is energy. So does that answer your question?
Yes, and also recently, a lot of people, obviously, I've heard of the fact that this energy or this light source from the sun is what's actually activating our DNA now. But a lot of people have also been mentioning, which I also kind of am on that side, that there has been a manipulation, or at least we're noticing that there seems to be another body in the skies similar to the sun, but not giving off the same, I guess, light energy. Many people around the States have said that they've seen two suns, one that is orange, more orange hue, and one that is a whiter hue. And I actually, the other day, was at the beach with my children, and I had to stop them. They must think, their mom is, and I'm like, what do you guys see? And I said, there's the sun giving off a hue of orange in the distance, but then there's another body that's very white, and it doesn't seem to be giving off the same amount of light. Do you believe that either this is something being put in front of the sun to stop this process of activation, or for us to receive these higher vibrational energy codes? Or do you think that this could just be something that was already there and that now it's becoming visible to us again?
Well, I believe that there's an overlay, and what we're seeing up above us is not real. I think that this is a projection. This is an overlay. I still think that there's a moon and there's a sun and there's the cosmos and all these sorts of things. But yeah, there is some sort of an overlay. I think also that's probably what the chemtrails are doing, is they're trying to block out things. So as we're seeing more things, because physical reality is not real. So they've created an overlay to make us believe that we're seeing certain things, because our eyes hardly see anything. Yes. So our eyes hardly see anything in terms of the visible light spectrum, but our brain filters out even more. So the more we are in our analytical mind and our ego, the more we will probably see more of an overlay. The more we become more spiritual and energetic, the more we will see beyond the physical and start to see things like, the real sun and the the white sun. Interestingly, the indigenous people talk about the three different, I forget which tribe it was, but they talk about the three different suns, and they say that the red sun is, there's certain time periods, and when we get to the white sun, that is signaling the end of the world, which is the end of the simulation, essentially. So the world doesn't end, you know, the simulation ends, and that's something different. And they're using the biblical end times, which is the people talking about the end of the simulation, the end times, which is also talked about in all the indigenous tribes. They all talk about it. So it's something that, you know, we really have to sort of take notice of. And but they all say this is a beautiful time. It's not a wipeout time. It's a beautiful time. It's a spiritual awakening time. It's a rebalancing of the universe, and you know, there's nothing to fear. But these people who've hijacked our world, they are now recreating the biblical end times, and essentially, you know, they've changed the ending and made it, you know, into some sort of Hollywood wipeout movie, as they've done with all of their sort of TV and film. So I'm not too sure. I mean, I see more of the white sun as well, but sometimes I do see a red sun, and I haven't seen a double sun myself. So I need to experience things before I can talk about them, because that's just how I'm made. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just sort of, you know, regurgitating other people's truth. I need to find my own truth, and I don't have to experience it physically. I can experience it spiritually and energetically in order to experience it, just like, you know, I've done with all of this. And yeah, I don't know. I feel that the white sun for me is a more pure sun. But it's interesting what this indigenous people said about that the red sun, the gold sun, or the yellow sun, and the white sun, this is signaling the end of something. So, you know, is maybe the white sun the simulated sun, or is it the orange sun that's the simulated sun? I don't know.
Well, thank you so much. And I wanted to just have you explain just a little bit about your own work for people who might be interested in what you do, because what you actually do is you help people also to reconnect with themselves, right? Yes, in a multi-dimensional way. So can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I do quite a lot of things, and I think first and foremost, I would say that I'm a researcher, but I'm a researcher like a truth seeker. You know, I feel I'm here to find the truth and then help other people to find their truth as well. But that sort of spreads out into many different things, you know. So I also teach intuitive and spiritual development, and that's about helping people to connect back to their own intuitive abilities, their own spiritual self. And you know, by the end of the year program, they're a very different person, and they start to see reality in a different way. And what I've discovered about becoming more spiritual is it eliminates depression and mental health issues. So I can see that that's the answer to having a happier life, is to essentially connect back to your energy body, you know, the subtle energy that's around you. I also do past life regression therapy with people, because I think that often we have to go further back than our childhood wounds. It's not just healing our childhood wounds. Sometimes it's healing our past life wounds as well. And so I help people to heal those. And healing is just creating awareness. And then we just have to keep doing it, you know, and positively reinforcing. And I also do quantum hypnosis with people, which is the Dolores Cannon one. And this is to allow people to connect with lives on other planets, other universes, other parts, because so many of us are star seeds here. And we've come in from completely different realms. And for us, Earth is a real, like, oh my God, what am I doing here? You know, it feels very, very uncomfortable. You know, people don't know how to navigate anything. And so that's more about that, you know, helping them to understand who their soul families are, you know, which star people they're connected to. And this tends to come later with people, you know, people sort of tend to have to go through the earth stuff first. And then they start to connect with their soul stuff, I think, their star families. And of course, I write books because, you know, I'm a truth seeker. So everything I discover, I put down in my books, and to help other people, essentially, on the same path that I've walked. And I have a YouTube channel and a podcast like you. Again, it's just sharing information, isn't it? Different ways to share information.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason why I think you, as well as I, do podcasts and share the information is, like you said, to just bring the awareness and try to help people who maybe are a bit lost on their journey and just want to be able to reconnect again. So after all of this is said and done, how does this empower you to live your life, knowing everything that you know about our souls, our purpose here on earth, and everything going on in the world? How does that empower you to live your life now as a mother, in every way, as a woman?
Yeah. Do you know, I think the most helpful thing that I've learned from all of this is to know that I do not die. And I'm only here for a very short amount of time. And I'm here to do something, to help in some way. And I make every day count in order to help with that, because I know that I will not be here forever. And we don't actually ever know when we're going to check out from this. So just making every day count. And for me, that's, you know, helping other people, helping my children to guide them into becoming, you know, loving, compassionate, kind adults, helping the people around me, helping to share, you know, information with the world. And then, you know, and also now what I'm looking at is eco-communities, creating eco-communities and using what was the original law, which is actually called natural law, and it's also called God's law. And this is the original law. It was last seen in the UK courts in 1705. Again, this 1700 showing that something happened in that year. And, you know, it's the original law, so it's legal. And the gypsies have been using it for centuries, and that's why the police cannot touch them. The gypsies are allowed to do anything that they want, and that's why they always talk about, you know, they always try and make the gypsies sound such bad people, because they essentially, they don't participate in the corrupt systems that have been created, because they understand about natural law or God's law. So by getting back to that law, we can override the corrupt systems. We can stop paying tax 7 times over for the same thing. We can, our children can be educated better in a more, you know, in a nicer way, a less traumatic way. And, you know, we can live better lives, not having to be part of that corrupt system, which makes so much struggle and pain, suffering for everybody. And it's easy. We can do that now. So that's what I'm focusing on now.
Well, thank you so much, Elisabeth, for coming on the show and speaking to me. And I think that everything that you've provided, all the information you've provided, is going to be a great help to a lot of my listeners. And for those wanting to learn more about Elisabeth's work, you're going to find the links in the podcast description below. And if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to sacredmindshift.com so you never miss an event or another exciting discussion. And thank you so much, Elisabeth. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you very much.